Hello. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Very happy to be here to be talking about kind of driving transformation and African innovation in the disability space. Um, as we know, Africa is an incredibly important continent, and Africa in 2050, 1 in 4 people in the world will be African. It's the youngest continent on the planet, which means the future of ideas, the future of innovation, the future of many things is going to be African. So I'm joined here today. I'm Archie Mobley. I'm the program lead for Seed Inclusivity, a program designed for entrepreneurs with disabilities and assistive tech founders across emerging markets. And I'm here with Bernard, who I'll let him introduce himself quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Archie. My name is Bernard Shira. I am the founder and CEO of AT4D. We are a disability innovation hub and accelerator for assistive tech based in Nairobi, Kenya.
Wonderful. So Bernard, you and I are both very personally and professionally invested in Africa, and particularly when it comes to disability. So I'm very happy to be sharing this session with you today to talk a bit more about AT4D and the work that you are doing there. You're probably the prime candidate to talk about this and talk about the future of innovation in Africa. So I want to first start with Africa as a sort of a leapfrogging leader. Africa is sometimes incorrectly labeled as a continent that is catching up. But in many cases, Africa is leapfrogging and overtaking many kind of institutions and technologies. And in assistive technology and inclusive entrepreneurship, I'd love to hear if you think that's something that's happening. Where do you see African innovators outpacing the global north?
All right, yeah. So first of all, Kenya is home to Africa's first assistive tech accelerator, which I was leading since 2019 up to now. And in some sense, that has been a great achievement because now there is over 75 assistive technology ventures across 11 countries that we've supported. And in terms of like leapfrogging and this idea of is Africa building just for Africa or for the world, at least from what we've seen in our programs, is that the assistive technology ecosystem globally, it's actually a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's dominated globally by not so many companies. And this idea of having young companies solving or making solutions for people with disabilities is amazing because it's creating a new crop of companies that put the user first. So in some ways, how Africa is leapfrogging is putting users first more than any other market that I know. And in some ways, we have seen African startups like Hope Tech actually going to market in other regions in Europe, and they're here in Vienna as well. And what I'm seeing is that the future of assistive technology is actually being built everywhere, including in Kenya. And having come here at the Zero Project Technology Forum, and to see the same ideas across China, Japan, and also Africa, it's signaling something.
Thank you. You mentioned sort of multi-million-dollar industries and so on. There's a buzzword that's being touted a lot, which is AI at the moment. And AI in the African disability context, I think, is particularly interesting. And this is something that you're working on and studying at the moment. And when it comes to inequalities, I think the world of disability knows this very, very well. And AI, there's something to be careful of, is how will it close any gaps or indeed expand any of them. So in the disability agenda, what is it you're doing at AT4D to ensure that this is something that's embedded now rather than a sort of forgotten afterthought?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've just published a report now. This has been a scoping study across 3 countries in Africa, Kenya, Rwanda, and Ghana. And it's trying to understand AI and disability. And we've talked to people with disabilities, more than 500 of them across these regions, and they are giving us their perspectives on the daily use of AI in everyday applications, like the ones we all use, ChatGPT, etc. And also how they have used some AI-based assistive technologies. And in my program, for example, we have a company that is building a digital sign language, and they're actually using AI to build a real-time interpretation. And people are very excited, but at the same time concerned because they want AI models that are responsive and context accurate and not just having data from other places. So this report, it's a wonderful collaboration with IDRC Canada and some amazing partners in Kenya, the Next Step Foundation, and also the Responsible AI Lab in Kwame Nkrumah University. And what it's leading to is that we are now creating a hub for AI and disability inclusion to help do two things. One, figure out if you're building AI in Africa, how do you make sure that it's inclusive of people with disabilities, regardless of the sector you're in? And then number two is, if you're building an AI-powered assistive tech, how do you find pathways to scale? Because this is one of the major limitations. And some of the foundations we are looking at is like the data sets. So these universities are working with us to actually create new data sets for AI innovators.
Wow, thank you. I think this is something where AI is going to be particularly interesting. As you mentioned before about African disability context, the user is coming first in terms of the personalization of it. And I think AI has a big role to play in that. I want to shift us a bit more to the context of kind of humanitarian and crisis settings. Africa is a continent that is sort of unequally affected by things like climate, conflict, and so on, and economic crises, which are a part of everyday life. So how do you see African innovators and assistive technologies and the partners that you work with that are turning these types of challenges into opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had the incredible opportunity to work with some really great people in the humanitarian sector, specifically UNICEF in Kenya, and also with Innovation Norway. They are an arm of the Norwegian government that funds humanitarian programs. And what we are doing with UNICEF, Enable, and Kilimanjaro Blind Trust Africa, these are the other organizations of people with disabilities we're working with, is to ask this question: what does a data-driven, inclusive humanitarian action look like for children with disabilities? And why children is because obviously this is a focus area of UNICEF, but also one of the greatest ideas in assistive tech is that if you get assistive technology at the right time, early enough, it can actually transform your life. Like the studies that have been published, actually there's a report called the investment case for this assistive tech is done by 80 scale, and it actually says you can improve the lifetime earnings of a child who gets access to assistive technology by $100,000, and this is incredible. So with UNICEF and these other players, we are trying to embed how do you identify these kids during a disaster, and how do you make sure their accessibility and assistive tech needs are met. So we are building a NICO, which is we call it a digital spine for this work, but it's actually combining data and also using very simple technologies to allow anyone to trigger this process with an SMS. And then that helps governments, humanitarian actors to onboard that child and get them the help that they need. And so what we are seeing with this is a shift because we want to connect that space with also the assistive tech startups and ventures that are building these solutions. So eventually we want them to get the best solutions that are context specific, and they are going to come from the continent as well. So this is very exciting for us as well.
Yeah, it's extremely exciting. I think I can certainly speak for myself in terms of assistive technology being something that is transformative as a child, having been a user of that myself. You're talking a little bit there into the idea of the ecosystems and the other players that are involved when it comes to such interventions. Now, you helped to build, I think, Africa's most well-known and its first assistive tech accelerator, which is now a sort of disability-led trust and a blended fund, which is also a very exciting part of your journey recently. I think it sort of highlights the need for a systems change and the full ecosystem intervention, which is something that you're definitely actively working on. How do you see this playing out in Africa?
Yeah, so first of all, I think when you look at a systems change conversation, it's actually a long-term game. Systems don't change overnight. They could. We've had young people in Africa, for example, challenging governance systems and requiring like for better accountability. But I think the approach is going to be a little bit different when it comes to assistive technology because, first of all, there are many systems around assistive technology. So it's not just like one system. So for us, because we work in innovation and entrepreneurship, one of the systems we really intentionally decided to address is the capital system of how assistive technology actually gets funded. And what we are seeing increasingly in even like very established systems like venture capital, there is actually huge gaps globally when it comes to investing in disability. So we are very happy because we just recently signed a partnership with the Judith Nelson Foundation to do the first pilot in Africa to set up a fund that can invest early in assistive technology ventures. And Momenta's fund basically is meant to shape and send signals in these capital systems that governments, private sector, philanthropy can actually lead in the creation of new capital systems that are responsive to investing long term and investing early, which sometimes venture capital doesn't have the patience for, especially in markets that are not yet very proven. So that's one system. And of course, the other system we really look at is this idea of agency and people with disabilities themselves being at the forefront of innovation. And one of the things we've done consistently, even with our accelerator program, is every innovation that we support has to be validated and somehow get signed off by the community of people with disabilities that are going to be using it. So we bring innovators and people with lived experience together every time. And this has dramatically changed many of these technologies. And also we are looking at, okay, how do you start also building communities that can be self-sustaining and drive their own agenda that are led by people with disabilities. And one of the things we started looking there is jobs and employment. So we realized that the technology sector has massive potential to create jobs for people with disabilities. But even when some of these people are very qualified and have the skills, they still don't get that jobs. They are stuck in early careers internships. So we are now testing mentorship as a bridge to create job opportunities. But we are finding the very best of people with disabilities who want to basically go to the next step in their career journey. So using this idea that you can get industry leaders to be reverse mentored by young people with disabilities and create a relationship that allows them to be the first ones to know when there's a job.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's something that on the African continent, which is so evident, is the kind of the user-led journey, the user-led experience, but also people with disabilities being the people who are making this change. The slogan, "Nothing about us without us," is obviously a well-known one. I think in Africa, I've seen that to be more true than perhaps some of the other regions we've worked in. So it's very exciting to see where Africa's going to go. I think we both believe it is really the future and is in many ways leading this, and particularly you are leading it as well. So the next chapter of, I think, disability inclusive innovation is a very exciting one. And I think the future of it's going to be, African in many, many ways.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm very grateful for this partnership with this global community. And if you want to learn more about what we do, you can come onto our website, 84d.org, and also reach out to me. Yeah, let's enable people together. Thank you.
Thank you.